My name is Jason Levy. I'm owner and operator of the Comfort Guy Heating and Cooling with my wife Cheryl-Ann. I've been doing this trade myself for 30 years, and we've been in business now, I believe, for 12, 13 years now.
Jason and I started our business from our home in 2005. We turned our garage into a sheet metal shop and our dining room into an office. And we outgrew that very quickly. Actually, about 7 months, we started looking for a new location, and we moved to Dundas Street in Woodstock in 2006, June. At the Comfort Guy, we offer
Air conditioning installation, both new and retrofit,
furnace installations,
fireplaces,
water heater installations.
HVAC consulting.
We even do electric fireplaces, gas, propane, and wood. We do not service oil.
Pretty much everything, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
We have a custom sheet metal shop, so we design and build all of our own ductwork for our installations as well as for new home construction.
All our ductwork is rectangular ductwork, and fittings are all done in-house. They're made to fit your home. On the day of the installation, we'd come in and start from there. When we tear out, we'd measure what's needed to fit in there rather than buy something that we have to chop up and put more joints and stuff in to have it fit into your situation. We rather make everything fit right from the get-go, from the furnace to your situation.
We were called out to this home to put in a fireplace. So we quoted the job, went out and saw the job, and actually upon doing the job, we found a lot of crazy stuff going on this job. It was an old home, and there were some issues when we started taking apart the area where the fireplace was going. We could see that there needed a lot more structure behind it. It just wasn't going to be able to handle that flow that Jason had originally planned in the installation. So we spoke with the homeowner and went ahead and took a couple more days to do the installation. The homeowner was very impressed with Jason's work. It turned out absolutely beautiful, beautiful granite front fireplace. And he asked him if he could possibly help him with heating his upper floors. He had just recently had a furnace put in, but his upper floors just weren't getting warm. And we've experienced this in many homes before. And it doesn't alert us to a bad furnace installation. It just alerts us to the fact that there may not be enough ductwork on the upper floors, and all companies don't even address that.
So I went down and had a look, and I found out, whoa, this is terrible. This isn't just a bad furnace installation. Like this is a bad everything.
Like you see how we got your tag up on here?
Yep.
So that's back when we put the fireplace in. And anytime you put a piece of gas appliance in or gas equipment, you gotta own it. It's your baby to you. So on here is our card. It's got the address, the name of our company, our registration number, phone numbers to get a hold of us, the date we did it, pressure we put in the line, how long we tested it for, the fitter's name. In this case, it was me, and my license number. So that'll go on that gas line, and that way, if there's anything that happens or anything, don't know who to get a hold of, or for whatever reason, you take credit for what you do. It's, you know, and in our business, we find that what we do, we're proud of what we do. So we have no problem posting this. The original person who put this gas line in, however, brought the gas line in, and there's nothing here to mark on it. Who put it in, what it is, what's the pressures, nothing. Did they test it, anything? So yeah, everything is just strapped against. So it looks like he probably didn't have another one of these. Proper standoff there to keep that back across the top, and then he strapped it down the side of the furnace right to the ductwork, which the manufacturer stated is a definite no, you can't do that, and you definitely can't be using plastic straps to do that with. This venting, plastic straps to it. I believe in the instructions of the venting, it says you definitely can't, you have to use metal straps for it, and definitely don't use the furnace or the furnace ductwork to support any of it, which is exactly kind of what they've done. So the grossest for me is looking at this sheet metal. Put all this together with just pieces of metal they had on the truck to fit it into this mess to adopt the furnace into that furnace. You can see it's just, these are S-cleats that we use to slide over and make connections, but we don't use them on all four sides generally. He's used them on the sides as well as on the edges, just to bend steel with his pliers, stuff it in, and then pump it full of screws. Any licensed sheet metal guy or any guy with a little bit of pride would never do anything like that. This one over here is far worse because it's going to take, you see the size of the ductwork up above, and then they just squished it right down into this little dinky size, and it's all hand bent over and then screwed up. Nobody's taking any pride in their work, even like the old guys did here back in the day when this was built. It's a seam, and they've hammered that over by hand. That seam's all been hammered over for an airtight seam, and then you use the proper spots for your S's. Here's a correct S plate being used by them. This is something they purchased from a store to fit the side of that air cleaner, and then they've purchased a piece of ductwork, but they've cut it to fit it here, so that gets them to the job site, gets that hooked up, and then some handyman will come in with their, or whoever they use, I don't know, it's pretty sad to say, and he's just bent this adapter up with a couple of pieces of tin, screwed it together, and popped this on. He's called that a connection. It's not enough. It's definitely not enough air to flow into this furnace. The model number is 100,000 BTUs, and I believe it's got a 5-ton blower. We'll get into that later, but that air cleaner, the instructions say that it's supposed to have returns on both sides with large ducts coming out of it because it is such a huge furnace requiring such an amount of air. It's clearly not nowhere near it. So we're going to get ready to start hauling this thing and tearing it out soon and throw it away.
So when Jason was in the home and he found the installation to be incorrect, he immediately contacted, like the homeowner was with him on the site visit, because he asked him to correct some ductwork problems. So Jason, they were there together in the basement, and he identified to the homeowner that the situation at hand, that this was a really rough installation and that somebody needed to take responsibility for this. So they immediately contacted, Jason immediately contacted the installing company.
And I got the gentleman on the phone that works there, or is a son of the owners, I'm pretty sure, but he talked to me for a little bit. I expressed my concern that nobody was coming over there to look at it and join me at this. He was a little concerned that maybe he didn't like my attitude. Well, my attitude is that everything about this furnace is bad. I feel that you've stole from this customer, but so somebody really needs to come out from behind an office chair and see me and explain some of this. Like, it's bad and it doesn't meet up to any code.
And they came in and they actually sent 2 installers that put the furnace in, and they were a little bit upset about the fact that someone was calling them out, so they were kind of aggressive and really didn't do anything.
But they came down and said everything is fine with this job except for the fact we didn't hang our gas tag on the line. That's the only thing we did wrong, and everything else is fine. And poof, away they left. 10 minutes later, I got a call from the propane company again. It tells me that everything is just fine. Their installers were there, and this is great. There's no problem. Well, there's a big problem. This is terrible. Like, it's not to the gas code, the propane code, the TSSA standard. There's nothing that the manufacturer's instructions. There is nothing from the ductwork that is connected to this furnace, to the electrical wire that was hooked up, to the chimney venting, to the drain, to the AC that was already on that was installed. Nothing was done was done correctly. Therefore, the efficiency of this furnace, right down to the propane kit they installed, was not set up correctly. This furnace could never, ever possibly run at its peak efficiency or performance, or even satisfy the homeowner with comfort, efficiency, and operating expenses, cheaper operating expenses. The water heater that was taken out and installed was a complete farce. Did not meet nowhere near, I would not think, any plumbing code, any ethical conduct code, nor the instructions that came with the water heater. It was all wrong. And this is where our system has failed us. In this particular case, the TSSA gives us regulations that we have to follow, different ones for us, different ones for propane suppliers and companies. In this particular case, the company that put the furnace in is also the company that sells the propane. So herein lies our big problem. When I put a furnace in town, a new installation, I have to call the gas distributor. They come out, they hang a meter on the wall. Before they hang a meter on that wall, they come in and they inspect my job. and they say yay or nay if there's an infractions or not. If there's an infractions, I have to fix that and repair that on the spot to a degree with the gas code. So we fix it up and go. If the customer hears that, they're not going to write you a check. They're not going to give you a check and say, oh, well, let me pay you anyways, even though it's wrong, come back later, fix it. It doesn't work that way generally. So here we go back to this particular case, because now we're in the country and the propane is happening out here. It's a little bit different game, I think. I don't know if there's a TSSA guy out there that can explain this to me a little better. I need to hear it because I don't understand this. So what happens is they put the furnace in. The fuel supplier, propane company, should show up, inspect the job on the inside. There's also a regulation for them that they have to fill out. There has to be a certain criteria met before the gas should be turned on to this appliance. Well, if you're the same company, selling the furnace, selling the propane, putting it in, you're coming in to inspect your job, I think there's a pretty good chance it's going to pass. I think there's a pretty good chance that we're going to turn the fuel on and we're going to start running propane out the tap here. That's a huge problem because they're inspecting themselves. And in lies the problem, they failed. So if the propane supplier would have came in and said, hold on a minute, this isn't installed correctly, you guys, the ductwork's not big enough like the instruction manual says. It needs to be double the size of what you've got to actually feed this so it doesn't sound like a freight train in the customer's living room 5 feet above us. The gas is not installed correctly. The gas is strapped to the ductwork. It's not installed right. There's a reason they make these rules. I don't make them, but it's real easy to follow them if you know. But all these things that just compound it, add up. The electrical, not done right. The sheet metal, not done right. So it all adds up. They could have said, hey, this all has to be repaired before we can turn the furnace on. The customer would have been alerted to this. They would have known what they looked for. We wouldn't have been into this spot that we're in now. So now I have to call, I'm the guy who I've stuck here. I'm on the case, it's not Dakota, I have to call the TSSA. Those are the people that are responsible for overseeing us, supposedly. And because we separated, somehow they've got this separated, we also have the sheet metal is looked after by the Ontario College of Trades, another entity that looks after apprentices in that trade. So we have to start, we called the TSSA and their guy came over, who is, and I don't understand this, but I called in, I made a specific complaint. This is a furnace installation that is not done correctly. I need somebody here because I'm responsible. I'm the last guy in, that's what their regulation tells me. So I need to get the responsibility off of me and my company and put it onto them because they oversee us and they can advise us on how better to operate.
And this was not something that like we called them and they showed up. This took forever and calls back and forth in order for these things to get accomplished. So
they sent out a boiler vessel mechanic, I believe, who has absolutely, I don't know how many furnaces he's put in over the years. I don't know how many he started up. I don't know what he did, but I do know he didn't have a clue what he was looking at. He didn't understand any of it. Everything about this job is wrong, right down to their gas code, right down to the regulations that if you would have went in and looked at, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, I don't know. But they should have looked at the propane company. Did they do their due diligence as far as investigating the installation of the furnace? Was it the code? Where's all the records of that? Because what happened at the end of the day was he sent a customer a letter that said you had until a certain date to get this repaired at your expense. To the customer, your expense, who just paid $6,800 for this junk system. That remember, if the propane company would have advised them that this is a crappy installation, oh, but we don't do that to our own people, that's right, that would have stopped it. The customer wouldn't have wrote that check. Would have stood up a lot better. But now, if it comes down to the customer repairs it, and if the TSSA, well, we don't get into litigation, that's a legality matter. So now we got to tie up the court systems with this bullshit story that should have been caught in the first place if the system was set up correctly. But when you're inspecting yourselves, guess what happens? Homeowner loses every time. Call the Ontario College of Trades. Hey, I got a couple of licenses I pay big money a year for, you know. And this sheet metal job is all hammered out, screwed in. There's nothing anywhere about the sheet metal trade, or a licensed sheet metal mechanic would be proud to say they made that. There just isn't, unless you're I'm not even going to begin to try and dream of why you made this stuff. But at any rate, they did it. They didn't read the installation manuals. They didn't. So the sizing is now all choked down. The furnace can't breathe. The furnace is grossly oversized for the house as it is, let alone for their ductwork. Not bringing enough air back, therefore can't put enough air out. The propane bill is going through the roof. Hold it. Propane supplier is the same guy who put that in. That's right. That's right. So he's really not concerned about how much propane he's going through in a year. Like, if I'm wrong here, TSSA, Ontario College of Trades, any of you guys out there that are hearing this or seeing this, help me out to understand why this is okay for them to do that. And when something happens, like, this is why do we have to fight and have the customer go to, like, why don't you guys step up and say, this is wrong, you need to make it right from the get-go, whether it be a monetary value because the customer doesn't want you back in the house. I don't know, but something's wrong here and something needs to be right with this system, other than people collecting checks off of me once a year for dues and what I call it, do's and don'ts. We pay the dues and you guys do the don'ts. We need to stop that, and we need to get do's and do's going on, and customers are going to be happier, more protective. It's a box down in the basement that a customer forgets all about. It's up to us to step up and make sure that what it's all about is years of comfort, years of savings, rather than this.
What we're going to show you here is this is the air conditioning coil. The furnace already had air conditioning back in the day. They just slid it out of the way right now, got the furnace underneath and slid it back in. The problem with doing that is generally sometimes these coils are awfully small. They're just made for your generic furnaces back in the day, and most times out of 10. So, and like in this particular coil, they just shoved it back in. So you see the size of the hole down here, 20 by 20, all that air's got to come up. Well, when it comes up to here, we can look inside the furnace and we can see that, they have to block it off so they can force the air through the coil and up and out to get your air conditioning. Again, look at the dirt in there from the nice job they did on sealing everything up. It's just mind-blowing to me on all this dirt that they've managed to blow through the system. So theoretically, the hole in the sides of the furnace, everything, it's all going to relate down to having to blow through this here. So we're going to pull this out and give you a little show of what it looks like underneath here, and how big this furnace is and how much air it has to move. And then the way, by putting this small little air conditioning coil on top and maybe not sizing it to the new furnace, it's restricting the air and really choking it down. So just give me a few minutes and I'll get that out. And that's it, folks. So we're going to take a furnace plenum that had an opening of 20 by 20 on it. It's supposed to move 5 tons of air, 100,000 BTUs, 5 tons of air, because it wasn't set up properly through that coil of 9 inches by 16, as well as the restriction in the coil itself of trying to go through there. So we go from 20 by 20 to 9 by 16, pretty much cut it less than half and force it through. To me, that doesn't look good, this stuff that we see on here. I'm not an expert on the M word or anything like that, but I'm guessing that's probably not a good thing. To see that, it definitely is going to come down to what we call an airflow problem that's caused that to especially come down on the inside. So you can see back up in here, it's just atrocious on the dirt that they've forced into this and forced up through the top of this furnace. Like, this has all just been done within 3 or 4 months. I think the Ministry of College and Trades, the sheet metals guys, got some sort of code of conduct, but I don't think it's enforced at all. You can see the difference in size of the opening versus the opening here. I think it's going to be pretty obvious which one's going to probably flow a little more air. It's going to probably do a better job of cooling, a little bit more efficient cooling, as well as now we're also going to do some dehumidification, which this coil was definitely not pulling humidity out of the house. It was probably just freezing up and creating a lot of water. So there are the proper coils that guys have to take into consideration. There's a good price difference in between the two coils, so sometimes their price looks a little neater, a little tidier than maybe ours, but at the end of the day, you're getting what's needed and the proper coil put on your furnace versus something that's so small that's just going to choke the ductwork down.
But it was sad. It's not correctly sized, therefore when it's correctly sized, it affects the whole operation of the furnace. Everything. The air conditioning, the noise, the efficiency, everything is affected by that airflow coming in and going out of that furnace. And you guys need to look at it a lot more than what you are right now. Again, everybody's big deal at the end of the day was furnace wasn't installed to manufacturer's instructions. And they all give us letters, and the customer had a thing and he had to have it fixed by this certain day. Well, here we are, April 13th. And not one person from the Ontario College of Trades or the TSSA has even contacted anybody to see if anything's been done about this repair.
So they did something, but it turned on the customer, unfortunately, which again is the reason why Jason and I are so passionate about the business that we do, is that the customers come first. And these guys are on board with not putting the customers first and just doing what they got to do to get paid at the end of the day, in my opinion.
So that's what brings us to where we are now, what we're going to take to fix it, and go from there, because I can't control what they do, what they don't do, the TSSA. We just have to, homeowner knows it's wrong, he wants it made right, so away we went, did our thing. We brought, Cheryl came in, did a load calc on the house to find out just the right size of the furnace we needed to put into the home.
Once Jason had gone through the process of reporting the job and going through the authorities and that sort of thing, and we came to the position where the homeowners wanted to replace the equipment and make the installation better, they needed me to go in and do a load calculation. Another thing that I don't see companies doing anymore, and it's extremely important to a proper furnace installation, is to measure the entire home. I measure every floor, every door, every window, every ceiling height, what they got in their attic, what they've got in their basement as far as insulation. I have a physical report that I fill out, and I get a calculation, gives me a number for the size of their equipment, gives me the CFM for their home. It gives me information that our technicians can then use to properly install the furnace and set it up correctly. The furnace, so when I went and did the load calculation, that's obviously when I saw the furnace, because I had to go down to the basement and have a look. And I can tell a bad furnace installation right off the hop, but I'm not a code violator. I can't look and give the code violations on that job, but I can tell when it's not right and report it back to Jason. But of course that had already been taken care of. So I did the load calculation, and then I explained all of the equipment that was available to the homeowners to purchase, because as you know, the furnace was null and void of its warranty. So we had to get rid of that guy and start fresh. And the homeowner wanted to buy Lennox equipment, so it made sense.
Needed to know the air conditioning that it was going to take to cool the home, all the sizing on that, the size of, did new windows, doors go in, insulation values get changed over the years. This was an oil furnace that was in prior to the gas furnace, so the ductwork was all made for an old 60% efficient oil furnace. Things had changed upstairs in the house, the way the customer uses their home, the different rooms. The uses, bedrooms, stuff changed over the years. So it all has to be taken into account, because we've got an old oil duct system that was back when the house was first framed up, not necessarily what is there today. The furnace was sitting on dirt floor. If you see the pictures in any of the video, you can see the dirt just flying out of this thing. So we need to get it up. We need to seal it up. We need it correctly sized ductwork put to this unit. To deliver the air out, because it's not a big old belted fan in there trying to blow air through an oil heat exchanger and then through a jammed up little squeeze of an A coil that isn't sized correctly for any system, let alone this big system. All that had to be corrected and sized, and I'm sure you can see in the tape and the installation dues or before and after that there's quite a change happened here. But at the end of the day, the customer's comfortable. Their system is not even operating near the cost it took to operate before. They don't hear it. They don't hear it running. The big blast coming on. Their bedrooms are even heat throughout the home, throughout the main floor. The ductwork sealed. There's no dirt blowing through everywhere, all over everything. it's just a much better system all around. The comfort's there, and that's what we do. That's all we know how. We do it right.
Customers should always be concerned about their furnace installation. That's a priority over the equipment. Equipment is equipment. I mean, you can buy, just like anywhere, you can buy stuff at Walmart or you can buy it at the higher end stores. Typically, it comes down to how long it's going to last or how long it's going to produce for you. I think that equipment is important, but it's not key. The key is the installation of the equipment. And homeowners don't know, so they need to follow best practices for furnace installation sales. So when somebody comes in to sell you a furnace, if your salesman is not doing the right things that you can find online, what they should be doing, if they're not doing those things, then you need to call them out at that point. Don't purchase from those guys because they haven't done their homework from the very first time they walk through your door. And so that's a good indicator. We can't all know the details of a furnace installation or be able to properly identify when something is right or wrong, but we should be able to read people and understand that somebody else is going the extra mile. They probably are doing the same thing on the installation. We can't be shooting for the lowest price. You can buy equipment for a lower price, but the installation is always the bigger portion of the job. And 80%, BC Hydro did a study many years ago, many now, I'm going to say 6 years, maybe more, 80% of furnace installations in Canada were installed incorrectly. And that's huge. That's only leaving 20%. And now it's even worse, I'm sure, because people like TSSA, people like College of Trades are letting these things slide, and therefore there's no accountability. My husband's never going to get called out on his ductwork. Why does he need to carry a license? It's ridiculous what they're doing, and it's a money grab. Now they're telling me, the TSSA is telling me that they're going to put in we will have to apply for a permit to install furnaces. And I said, well, that's great. So you're going to inspect every furnace installation. Not that that would matter because they're not sending inspectors that know anything about it anyway. And he said, no, it's just going to be random. Well, what's the point? The point is they're putting more money in their pocket, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I see it, is that if we're not really going to inspect every one that you're asking a permit to, that's what the permit pays for, is for you to inspect it so that we can keep everybody honest and keep everybody in the right playing field. Because I feel very offended when I sit down across the table with a customer and they're being quoted by AYZ company that I know, and I know their installations, and they're comparing me apples to apples. That's completely unfair. And TSSA and College of Trades are doing the exact same thing. So it's putting the customers at risk. That's what it's doing. So customers need to be more savvy. Just like everything else in our society, it's our job to know. The whole Mike Holmes thing, when he came out, it made people more aware. I'm not advocating for Mike Holmes, but I'm saying that the awareness of what he brought to the table, like we are today, should be teaching homeowners something. And what it did teach them is that they needed to be more savvy about who they chose to come into their home. And if you're looking at the price as your top priority to purchase, then you're going to fail every time. Shoddy installations will work with brand new equipment for a while. So you're not going to realize what's going on until 4 or 5 years when you got to pay that price all over again to get that repaired. And now with Jason and I being in business for over 12 years, we've come across that. I've quoted customers, they've went with another company. 5 years later, I'm getting a call to go back in and completely reinstall the furnace or put in a new furnace.
So they're spending double.
Absolutely. So it doesn't make sense. The dollar at the bottom line should be fair. And Jason and I believe our prices are fair. Fair to keep our licensing and keep our guys doing the job correctly. But I think that the best practice for them to do that is to check. You can go to the College of Trades and see if your technician, get their name, do they have a license. You can go to see if they have a gas license, see if they're in one of those professions. And also, I think that they need to get reference checks, like find out from people. On our website, we have reviews that speak volumes about our company, not just installations, but service and how we look after people. And that's huge, because other companies are still operating under the old boys club where they all watch out for each other instead of the customer. And Jason and I came in with a new spirit, and I think it's changed the industry. It will change the industry. It's just going to take a bit of time.